If you want more time, money, freedom, and have a business that's not reliant on you, then you're in the right place. Each week, Mark Creedon, along with some of the very best business minds in the world, will take you through simple, practical steps you can take to create the business you always wanted. From his own practical experience, Mark will show you how to work less, make more, and get the business you always wanted, the one that you deserve. Now here's your host, one of Australia's most sought-after business coaches, Mark Creedon.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Mastermind for Business podcast. And do you ever think that in your business, like everything's just going to crap, right? Everything's going wrong, things aren't working, your team aren't working, you're not serving your clients the way you'd like, and the whole reason why you started your business in the first place seems like a long lost dream. Well, congratulations, you're in the right place. Because in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about perspective and how you can get some perspective around that. And the other thing I'm going to talk about is how it is that you can lock in the good times in your business to make sure it actually happens. That's what we're going to talk about today. You're in the right place. Let's get that underway. As always, joining me in the studio, I've got Nick behind the camera and in front of the microphone.
Thank you.
Nick, I was listening to Richard Wiseman's podcast, and I love Richard. Richard's a psychologist out of the UK. I love his podcast. Richard, if you're listening, I love your podcast. It's one of those great podcasts that talks about a whole bunch of things around success, mindset, life. But the most recent edition was something a little bit different. In the podcast, Richard interviewed Jonathan Goodwin. Now, Jonathan is an old friend of Richard's, and apparently they met both when they were sort of involved in magic. But Jonathan left the world of magic and became a daredevil / escapologist. And he did these amazing stunts where, he had to, I don't know about you, Nick, but these things always fill me with a bit of anxiety, to be honest. When you're watching the guy sort of being lowered into a tank full of water and he's got to undo all these locks and get out before he drowns, or the rope is burning and he's going to drop 50 feet to his death and he's got to untie the things and get out of the straitjacket before it happens.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just get anxious watching it. I hate to think what it'd be like actually doing it. But here's the thing. So Jonathan Goodwin was a very accomplished escapologist. And in 2021 on America's Got Talent, he did this stunt. And the concept of the stunt was that he was suspended from a very high location on a piece of rope. And either side of him were two cars that were swinging in like big pendulums. And when they hit in the middle, they would have sandwiched him and they were to explode. So what he had to do was escape the ropes and the various padlocks and things that he was tied up with before that happened. And he was to drop to the ground on an airbag. Now, what actually happened, and in listening to the podcast, the interview with Jonathan Goodwin, he's still at the point where he doesn't really know what went wrong. But in fact, what happened was the two cars came in, they did meet and explode, but he didn't escape in time, which means he was sandwiched by the cars, subject to the explosion. And then when he did drop, because a car or something had dropped and blown the airbag, he actually dropped and hit the ground. So he tells this story where he broke both his legs, he broke ribs, he broke both shoulders, but probably most devastatingly, he suffered a spinal injury and he is now a paraplegic. The interesting thing about the interview with Richard Wiseman was not so much, and they didn't talk a lot about what went wrong because they're still 2 years later still trying to work out really what did go wrong. But it wasn't so much about what went wrong, it was about what did he do about it. And I see this all the time in business where we can sort of go, like nothing's going right. We all have that. We all have those days, weeks, months, sometimes years, where just nothing's going right. You'll hear people say, I can't catch a trick. I can't catch a win. Everything's going wrong. And so really it's not about what's going right or wrong. It's about what you do with it that counts. And so Jonathan talked a lot about when he woke up in hospital, they said to him, you are paralyzed and you're never going to walk again. And his response to that was, okay. He didn't go through this massive grieving process. He just went, okay, well, that's the situation I'm in. It's not now, what am I going to do with the situation? What am I going to do to move past the situation? And I think that's a really important lesson for us to think about in business too. Like, stuff happens, right? Key people leave, clients stop working with you, you lose a case, you whatever it might be, something goes horribly wrong. And so you can sit and wallow in that, and you can also post-mortem it. And I think it's a big mistake that people often make is, it's good to know what went wrong so it doesn't repeat. But sometimes you can get so caught up in post-morteming what went wrong that you forget to look at what's on the other side of it. And there were a couple of things, Nick, that Jonathan spoke about. One of them that really rang true for me was, he said that not long after, when he was out of rehab, he went out to dinner with some friends, and there were another couple that didn't know him at all, and they booked the restaurant, and they didn't realise he was in a wheelchair, and they booked a restaurant that the table was up a couple of stairs, which of course just impossible for him. And so when he got there, he sort of thought, this is an example of, a bug of my life. I mean, shit, here I am in this situation, I can't even get up a couple of stairs. And he stopped himself and he went, no, do you know what? This is for me to take control of. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say to the wait staff, hey guys, can you please help me up these stairs? To do that, I need you to grab me here and grab the chair here and, lift me up and then bring the chair up and really take control of the situation. And it just reminded me of the importance that when things go wrong in your business, as they undoubtedly will and do on a regular basis, what's the approach that you take? Do you sit at the bottom of the stairs in the wheelchair and go, well, my life is shit and I can't get upstairs? And I mean, I don't know what that's like. So if anybody's listening to this who's in a wheelchair, I mean that with the absolute greatest respect. But do you do that, or do you go, do you know what? I'm actually going to take control of this situation. And I guess it's a tough one, Nick. And we don't know what we'd do unless we were there. But we can actually prepare for that, certainly in a business sense, can't we?
Yeah, 100%. I think something that I've taken great value out of in my business and doing stuff within my business is celebrating those little successes, those little wins, when you do have them, and the negative experiences.
Yeah.
Right, because it's, I guess looking at both the positive and the negative experiences as learning opportunities.
Yeah, it's a great thing. And we're going to talk a little bit later in this podcast, Nicholas, about how you talk about celebrating the wins, how you can make sure you have the wins and get the opportunity to celebrate them, and some skills or some really tricks, in fact, that you can use to do that. But I think what we can do, and here's hoping that nobody in listening to this podcast right now ever goes through what Jonathan Goodwin went through. But we are going to go through smaller versions of that in our business. We are going to go through things that just go horribly wrong. And I think the trick with that then is to go, right, I'm going to draw a line under that. It's gone wrong. What do we need to do? And I think there's 3 things you need to focus on. What do we need to do to address this particular situation? So in other words, if it's a client that's left, a client's unhappy, we've made a mistake for something with a client, we've got to address that situation, right? By the way, an old client of mine used to have this saying, which is the telephone doesn't weigh 3 ton. And yet time and time again, especially with you young ones, I see that, there's a message or an email, pick the goddamn phone up, actually talk to someone. So if something does go wrong, the number one thing we've got to do is work out how we're going to fix that particular situation. A good way of doing that is talking to them, actually having a conversation with them. The second thing we need to do is how do we prevent it from happening? So what are we going to do to fix this? The second one is, why did it go wrong? Understanding it, right, 100%. Why did it go wrong? Because if we understand that, we can prevent it happening. And then the third thing is, now that we're in this situation, what do we do with the situation we're in? How do we move forward? We can't change the past. We can't go back and rewrite history. You know, if we could, there'd be lots of things that would be done differently, and the world would probably be a happier place. But we can't do that. So the 3-step process, when things kind of turn to shit in your business on any given day or any given moment, I think there's 3 things. How do we fix this situation right now? So, you know, Nick, I was just thinking, it's a bit like a fire, right? How do we put out the fire? What do we do? Why did the fire start? And now that we've got something that's burnt, what do we do with it?
Yeah, how do we not make that same mistake again?
Yeah, and then therefore, how do we move forward? I think if you can follow those 3 steps with things that go wrong in your business, you're going to find that you'll change your mindset about how you move forward. But Nick, you were saying to me before that the concept of the reality is we have to accept that things are going to go wrong, and we have to accept some bad times.
Yeah, 100%. There's a great samurai who became a philosopher later in life. Actually, he was one of the greatest samurais of all time. I think it's Miyoto Musashi. He actually defeated 61 men in one-on-one combat.
Jeez.
So he was a hell of a samurai. But one of his most famous quotes was, he said, "Once you understand the way broadly, you can see it in all things." So the idea is that once you understand what the wins are about, what you understand what the bad and the good is all about, you can then, I guess, soak it all up and enjoy every moment of the good and enjoy every moment of the bad. I think that all the different things that we do enhance all of the other things that we do. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's a yin and yang kind of thing, isn't it? I know we're kind of mixing our philosophies up there, but
I think also recognizing the good and bad is a good reflection of yourself to other people.
Yeah.
I think understanding the good and the bad is crucial to send a message to people that you're observant of what's going on, that you're that you appreciate their efforts when it is good.
Yeah.
That you appreciate that they're trying to improve things when it is bad as well.
Yeah, and I think it also comes down to the fact that mistakes happen, right? People make mistakes, and I know for anybody that's ever worked with me, that if they come to me and I made a mistake on this, or a client's not happy with this, or my thought is this: did you wake up this morning and get out of bed and go, right, I'm going to go in and right royally screw things up this morning? Because if you didn't do that, then the rest is fixable. And I don't think people come in with any malice. They don't intend to screw things up. So as long as there's no malice or a forethought behind it, then we accept that mistakes are going to happen. Obviously, you don't want them to continue to happen. But I think we follow that same kind of simple process, which is what do we do about this particular situation right now is step number 1. Step number 2, how and why did it happen so we can prevent it from happening again. And step number 3, now that we are where we are, what do we do next? How do we move forward?
Yeah, and I think one thing that business owners miss quite a lot when it comes to their employees in regards to looking at the good and the bad is to identify the good and the bad things that people do. If there's bad things that are happening, people have to use effort to improve those things.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily recognise that as much as what we recognise when someone does a great thing that may not have required nearly as much effort as the improvement did.
Yeah.
We want to foster sort of a culture that's continually growing and improving in any workplace.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to really take on board the good and the bad and the effort and improvement areas that people are trying to make.
Yeah, I think rewarding effort for improvement is really important, and coaching people through that. So, and sometimes people are just sort of naturally talented, and so things come very easy to them. But I always love seeing people that I'm working with or who are working alongside us, where they've put in real effort to really improve themselves, and it's so rewarding to see. Having that sort of that positive mentality, that mindset concept. I want to jump into mindset just for a second, because something happened really interesting in the office here the other day. So one of our team came into the office in a real negative headspace. Right, so she walked in the door. We said, good morning, how you going? Not that good. And there was nothing seriously wrong. She was just in a bit of a down mood. And Nick, Caroline said to her, okay, I want you to put all your things down, and I want you to go back out the front door, and I want you to start again.
Yep.
right? We closed the doors. As she opened the door again, I said, good morning. And she went, good morning. I said, how are you? And she said, do you know what? Life's pretty good. And it was just a matter of just this, it's that circuit breaker.
Flipping the switch.
Yeah, flipping the switch, 100%. It was that circuit breaker to go, hey, we're going to flip the switch on this. And the truth is that in this particular, I mean, obviously if there'd been something horribly wrong, it would be a different approach. But in this case, it really was just a mindset. And so if we pick up from Jonathan Goodwin, he could sit around. Nick, he spoke about going to the beach, and he referred to the beach as his happy place. And he said after he got out of rehab, one of the early places that he went on holidays with his partner was to the beach. And he said he had to sit there and watch her walk on the beach, swim in the water, and it kind of broke his heart. And so he thought, well, I've got two choices. I can sit here and feel sorry and sad for myself and accept that that's my lot in life. And he said instead of doing that, he went and got his iPad, quickly Googled beach suitable wheelchair, bought one, got it delivered, and within a few days he was wheeling his way onto the beach and into the water. And I think that's a really great lesson.
I think that's something that sort of feeds into what you've always said to me as well, is that you need to accept. Sorry, I've lost it. Sorry.
That's okay. Editor will just edit that little bit out. I think the big lesson from that is that it's about perspective. And so, guys, the point I'm making here: if you've got stuff going on in your business, accept that there's going to be shitty times. Accept that things are going to go wrong, and it's the old serenity prayer. And I think that's where you were going before, Nick, wasn't it?
There's something that you have always mentioned to me is stop looking at the problem and look for a solution.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And if we find a solution, we're looking for a solution rather than a problem. And isn't it funny that people who are normally dealt this really crap card in life are usually the ones that have this great outlook to things, or have this positive outlook, and are able to find those solutions rather than focusing on the problem.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it, when you think about it? Because you look at some people and you go, how do you do that? But absolutely.
A lot of the time they don't have a choice, do they?
That's right. But you know what? In some ways they do, because mindset is a choice is still mindset. Yeah. So Jonathan could have just sat and gone, I'll never be able to go on the beach in the water again. But he sort of went, well, bugger that. I'm going to find some solutions. So guys, if there's shit going down in your business right now, hang in there, and start to think about, all right, that 3-step process. What do I need to put that fire out right now? What happens so it doesn't happen again? And number 3, where do I go from here? From a positive mindset, what can I learn from it? What can I do about it? How can I do things differently? Maybe I'm in a different position to I was now than I was a month ago, as was Jonathan. In an entirely different position when he got out of rehab compared to before the accident. So I think that's a great lesson to learn. Let's also have a think about how can you make sure that you really do get to enjoy the good times in your business. It's like most things. We've got a saying in Mastermind, which is cash flow follows your calendar, and all that means is that you work on the really big things, the important things that are going to generate cash flow. And you work on those first. And the more you put those into your calendar, the more likely they are to happen. But the same is true of the good times. I was speaking to Ollie from Body Reset in a hot seat this morning. And he said that, he made this point, he said, I'd rather disappoint a customer than my children. I'd rather disappoint a customer than my children. So he locks in time to spend with his kids, or locks in time to spend, with his family, with his wife, or whatever it might be. And the point I'm making here, or one of our mastermind members popped into the chat box and they said, what I want to do is I want to plan for spontaneity. Right? I want to plan for spontaneity. I loved that, because the reality is, in our business, we all get so caught up. We're so busy. We're trying to achieve what we set out to achieve in the business in the first place. And so sometimes we just get so caught up, we don't actually get to think about the things that really matter, the times that we spend, with your kids, your grandkids, whatever it might be, that are never going to come back, or your significant other, or on you, quite frankly. And I know, Nick, for you, something that you do really well is dedicate time to look after you.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's really important. I think it's like, goes back to when the aeroplane's crashing. You've got to got to put your own oxygen on before anyone else, because if you don't look after yourself, you're no good to look after anyone else, right?
Yeah, 100%. So the thing that the little trick that I want to leave with you in this episode is this. If you feel like you're getting overwhelmed and you're just caught in the day-to-day running of the business, you feel like the hamster on the wheel, there's a bunch of things that we can talk about, and throughout this podcast we're going to help you with that, as we do with all of our clients in our mastermind program. But one of the really simple things that you can do right now is you can work out what is something that would make you happy, what is something that would feed you, and lock it into your calendar. And you treat that entry into your calendar as you would any other kind of important appointment, an appointment with a client, an appointment with a doctor, an advisor, whatever it might be. It gets locked into your calendar, and in a perfect world, lock it in advance. But you know what? If you say that maybe, I don't know, maybe going for a walk or reading a book or something would actually feed your soul, right? Whether it's physical or whether it's mental. Don't go about, all right, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set aside 2 days and read 32 books. Don't do that. Set aside 10 minutes twice a day. Twice a week, I should say. 10 minutes twice a day. That might be a little bit too much as well. 10 minutes twice a week, and just start that process. But the really important thing is that once you set aside 10 minutes twice a week, in 6 weeks, suddenly that will now become a habit, and it becomes easier for you to extend that from 10 to 15, from 15 to 30, from 30 to an hour, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that people do straight off the bat with those sort of things is they have all these great ideas that they want to do for themselves or they want to achieve, so they bite off more than they can chew, and they create a consistency commitment that they actually can't stay committed to. They can't stay consistent with, because it's too much. They're biting off more than what they can chew.
Yeah.
Start small, I think, is the key.
Yeah, 100%. So look, find something that makes you happy, whether it's reading, going for a walk, date night. That's when I always say, like Caroline and I take date night, always. I take Thursdays, she takes Thursdays, she takes Tuesdays, works out really well. Sorry, team. Find something that makes your heart sing. Find something that's actually going to feed your soul. Lock it into your calendar. And I think that's the really important thing. I know, Nick, you love going to the gym, but that's not a random thing. You lock it into your calendar, you plan it in advance, it's there, and if you know that it's in your calendar, then it actually happens.
You're only disappointing yourself if you don't do it. Right?
Oh, I like that, 100%. So, guys, plan for spontaneity. Here's the thing, here's what we covered off on. A lot in today's episode. It's all about mindset. Make sure if things are going wrong, you've got that 3-step process to follow. Think about how you can look at things from where you are and how you can move forward. And then finally, lock things into your calendar. If you want to really enjoy the good times in your business, you've got to plan for them. You've got to plan to celebrate them, and you've got to lock it into your calendar. These are the very things that we work with every week with our mastermind clients. So if you are in your own business or you're a professional and you really wish you had a business that was a whole lot less reliant on you, metropolemastermind.com.au. Love to have a chat. Till we chat next time in the next episode of the Mastermind for Business podcast, this is Mark Creedon.